Hi, my name is Kathy Moyne and we're here at Green Thumb Nursery in Lake Forest to talk about potting up citrus trees. So I've been getting a lot of questions about can we put citrus in containers, because there's a lot of people who live in condos or have small yards and they don't think they can they don't have a spot in the ground where they can put a citrus. And the answer is yes, you can definitely put citrus in a pot. I mean, that's how we grow them, that's how we get them. So I've seen in many instances where a citrus can be in a container for a long time, 20 some years easily. I mean, you can even kind of bonsai them if you want to, pull them out, do root prunes, things like that. So it is very feasible to put a citrus in a pot. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to pot up a citrus. And we have a nice little 1 gallon Mexican lime that we're going to be throwing into a container today. And we're going to talk about the different soils that you need and how to go about putting this baby in a container. Now, one thing a lot of people think what they like to do, and this is like big mistake number one, is they want to put this little bitty old guy in this great big old pot. And this is a big mistake. Now I know you're thinking, oh well, it's like putting it in the ground, and this way if I put it in there, it's there for many years. Well, the problem is this little bitty old root ball is going to swim in that great big old pot. So the bottom stays too wet, the top dries out, and then it also, if it does survive your watering, it's just going to sit there. And it's not going to do anything, because underneath the soil, this guy is going to try to fill that pot with roots. So it's going to put all its energy into putting roots into that container, and doesn't care about giving you any fruits, doesn't care about growing. He's just going to try to maintain, because he's in survival mode at that point. So what I suggest you do is, like you should do, is you put it in a pot like this size. That's going to make way more sense. And actually, I have done that, and I have put a 1 gallon into a pot this size, and I've actually gotten fruit off of it the first season. So I know it works, and really this little guy can stay in this pot for about 3 to 5 years. So if you keep the top pruned off and you keep it small. Now if you want something big to go into that pot that I showed, you need to get a 15 gallon to put in a pot that size. Now the next size pot down would be like for a 5 gallon. So an 18-inch pot would be something you would put a 5 gallon citrus tree into. So that being said, we're going to put this pot into this pot. So you want to make sure that it has a drain hole, which it does. And one thing about clay is it breathes. So with citrus, they like to have good draining soil. They like to be able to breathe. Their roots do not want to be confined in a container. Plastic will work, but you won't have to water it as often. So keeping that in mind, you can, if you're like me and you're lucky the plants are lucky to get any water because you just don't have time, plastic is okay. But if you're the kind of person that likes to go out on your patio and for therapy you like to water, clay would probably be a better choice. So I like this pot because it kind of gives it a Tuscan look, so that's why we're going to put this guy in here. Now what I'm going to be using to pot it with is the Eevee Stone Citrus and Palm Mix. And this can be used in pots, or it can be used in the soil. So if you're going to put it in the ground, you can mix this product 50-50 with your soil. So, and then use that mixture to backfill your hole for your citrus that's going in the ground. But for containers, we're going to use it straight in here. Now, we want to, when we do plant it, I'm going to take this out. We want the top of now see, it's barely even rooted. So this is a young plant. So he can stay in this container, like I said, for a long time. It's not even rooted in that container. So what we want is our soil level needs to be level with the soil level that it's used to. Do not put soil over the top of the root ball. That causes crown rot. So the plant is used to having soil right here. He doesn't want soil above that. It's kind of like burying somebody up to their neck in sand and saying, okay, survive. You're gonna like that, right? So anyway, now when I put this in the pot, I want it to give myself about 1 inch to 2 inches of a lip so that when I water, I can give it a good amount of water. And when I do water, I fill it up to the rim, let it drain down, do it again, let it drain down, do it one more time. So you really saturate the root ball. Everything gets nice and wet so that you're not going to have it being inconsistent in the container. So in order for me to get that in the right spot, I'm going to have to put some soil in the bottom of the pot. So I'm going to go ahead and put some soil in here. I did put a screen, fiberglass screen over the hole so that the soil stays in and the bugs stay out, and that will help us to get this thing to go correctly. All right, so now I put in some soil, kind of measuring with my hand here to see if I got the right depth. I'll gently lay it in here. Now if this were really, yeah, that's right where I want to be. If this were really root bound, then I would go ahead and, whoops, I would go ahead and loosen the roots a little bit gently. But this is not root bound. I don't really need to do a whole lot with it because I don't want to damage the roots. Now I'm going to try to center it in the pot, trying to make my it to be like centered. So, you know, I'm just kind of OCD. So if you want to put it off to the side, you can certainly put it off to the side. It's not going to hurt anything. So now I've got it positioned where I want it in the container, and now I'm just going to go ahead and backfill in around the root ball. Now, when you're doing this, because I've got this up on a container and I got things all around it, I'm not going to water as I go, but generally I'll put in some soil, kind of firm it down around the root ball, and then I'll water it. And what that does is that causes the soil to pack down around the root ball, kind of gets the air pockets out of there. And that will keep it from your plant from sinking. Sometimes when we put them in these pots, the soil will start to compact down, and then it kind of sinks down. So if you kind of water as you go, you'll not have that problem. So we're almost done with this. These bags are really heavy, so that's why I'm not using my big full bag over here. I've got it here just in case I need more soil. All right, now I'm almost 1 inch from the top. So before I fill it in completely, I'm going to put in a little bit of starter fertilizer. So on this one, I'm using the Down to Earth starter mix. And as you can see, there's only 3% nitrogen, 3% phosphorus, and 3% potassium. So it's not going to make it go crazy, but it's going to give it a little bit of nutrition so that it can grow. We're trying to keep it from going into transplant shock. So again, by not loosening that root ball crazy, which can also cause transplant shock, and we're not going to give it a real strong fertilizer. I'm just going to do about 1 tablespoon in around the top. I don't want to over apply. Better to under apply than over apply, because if you over apply, you're going to burn it. We don't want to do that. So then we're going to kind of mix that in a little bit. Then I'm going to throw in good old Epsom salts. So I'm going to put a little bit of Epsom salts in here, and what that is magnesium. And these plants really like to have the magnesium. It helps with their root stimulation. It helps with, actually when it comes time to have a fruit, it actually helps with the flavor of the fruit, makes it sweeter. So, and that too is about 1 tablespoon of Epsom salts around the top. And you can use the Epsom salts you get from the pharmacy. Just don't want to have any fancy perfumes or anything like that in there. Then I'm also going to throw some Azomite in here. And Azomite is a soil mineralizer. And what that's going to do is just help it to get the minor nutrients that it needs and likes. And this one we can be generous with. I'm going to put a handful in here. There's no nitrogen. There's nothing in here that's going to burn anything. It is a volcanic source. It comes from volcanoes. and that's going to make these leaves nice and green as well. That's one thing I like about it. And also, this is something that you can apply every year, maybe even twice a year, in the spring and then again midsummer, just to keep the minerals going. Because when you water in there in containers, there's nothing that's kind of bringing in anything back into the soil, because you're constantly leaching out minerals and things like that. When you water, we have to add it. So this is something that I would add twice a year after you've actually planted it and it's been going for a while. Now I'll be talking about how to take care of it once it gets going, but since we're just talking about fertilizing and planting it right now, that's where I'm covering that information. Now you could also, if you don't necessarily want it to be organic and you just kind of want to throw some fertilizer in here and be done with it, you can use Osmocote. And Osmocote is not organic, but it will work, and it's okay for putting in with fruits and vegetables, things like that. And it's a slow release, so you can be a little more generous with it, and it's pretty safe because it's a slow release. Every time you water, it releases a little bit. So it lasts for about 6 months. So once in the spring, once in midsummer, fall, you've done your fertilizing for the year. So that's kind of nice. So for those of you who just can't seem to get it together on fertilizing, that's a good thing. At least it's better than nothing. Let's put it that way. All right, so now I've put in my Epsom salts. I've got my starter fertilizer in there. I got my Azomite in there. So now I'm going to head and top it off to where it should be at the top of the root ball. Remember, we had that soil level that we determined that we were not going to go above the root ball with, and so I had just the right amount of soil. So now, as you can see, or hopefully you can see, it should be right about where it needs to be in the soil, or in the pot. Okay, so now at this point, again, I would give it a nice deep soaking. You can't really overwater it because the water is going to go out of the pot. So if you do 5 gallons worth of water, it's not going to overwater. It's when you don't let the plant dry out between those waterings that you get the overwatering problems. So usually I'll stick my finger in a pot this size, about second knuckle down, and when it's dry, then it's time to water it. People ask me, oh, how often am I supposed to water it? And I say, when it's dry, because it changes. Like today, it's windy, so it's going to dry out a lot faster in a wind, or if it's hot, than it is when it's cool and there is no wind. So it's just kind of logical, and I probably don't really need to tell you that because you guys are all pretty smart. But again, if your overwatering comes from when you don't let it dry out between those nice deep soakings, and these guys want to be deep soaked for sure. Okay, now that I've got this in here, I am going to go ahead and top dress it with Malibu compost. And this is a highly composted dairy cow manure. It doesn't smell, it's not stinky. See? No smell. And I'm just going to do a very light layer on top. Now what this is going to do is it's going to jumpstart the microorganisms that are in the soil that we put in it. And it's also going to jumpstart the microorganisms that are going to eat that fertilizer that we put in there to make it available to the plant. Plants cannot uptake a lot of these fertilizers, especially if they're granular, on their own. They need to have some microorganisms that are in the top layer of the soil to break down those fertilizers to make it available to the plants. And this product, the Malibu compost, is loaded with microorganisms and the energy that they need to eat that fertilizer and make it, to convert it to something that the plant can use. It also helps with drought tolerance. It helps the plant to stay a little bit moister. So when we've got our 100-degree weather, maybe got some Santa Anas blowing, this guy here will hold the moisture a little bit longer, and it also helps with the soil tilth. It helps it to just be better. It's healthy. If you have healthy soil, you have healthy plants, and that's the bottom line as far as that's concerned. Okay, so now what I'm going to talk about is what do you do with the plant once it's been growing. So let's imagine that this plant has been in this pot for 6 months, and we need to fertilize it. So we're going ahead and give it a citrus food. And so actually I would do it in probably about 6 weeks, because this fertilizer is going to kind of disappear in about 6 to 8 weeks. So every 6 to 8 weeks, starting in about March, when the soil temperatures are above 50 consistently, because those microorganisms are sleeping when the soil temp is below 50. So if you're fertilizing it and it's too cold, you're kind of wasting the fertilizer. So don't be in a hurry. We're in March, so it's the soil temps at night are still in the 40s. Once they get into the 50s, you're pretty safe. And you know, there's going to be days where it gets warm and it's not, those organisms are going to wake up. But that's neither here nor there. It's better to do it than not do it, that's for sure. So I like to use the citrus mix, and then also twice a year I like to put a little bit of the John and Bob Soil Optimizer. And this one here has some sulfur in it to help lower the pH. It also has humectic acids in there. It's got all kinds of really good stuff to make the soil healthy. Again, we're going after healthy soils. And I also like to give it a shot of iron. Citrus are actually slightly acidic. They like to be below 7 on the alkaline scale. So I like to give them a shot of iron as well, and this also helps with the greening. Now this one has a little bit of a nitrogen in it, but it's not so much that you have to be concerned about putting too much on it. I mean, obviously you don't want to go crazy with it. Everything in moderation, as we know, eating as well. And you put a little bit of that in there, put a little bit of I do the ironite every 6 to 8 weeks with my soil, or with my fertilizer. So that's a good combo. The John and Bob's is twice a year, spring and fall. Then let's see, what else do I have down here that's fun? And you can still give it some Epsom salts as well when you're doing, I would do it twice a year with the John and Bob's. Now, in between that fertilizing, I have been using in my container this FoxFarm's Tiger Bloom. And you add this to water, and you water it in. Now last year I decided, you know what, I'm going to do that. One of the guys here likes to use it to kind of rejuvenate the citrus that we've had. Maybe it was an ugly duckling and it kind of was sitting in the corner. He'll start putting this stuff on it, and it's amazing how quickly it starts putting on new growth, starts greening up real well. And if it's a lime, limes and lemons can actually produce throughout the year. About every 6 months or so, they're putting on another set of blooms. Now this one has some buds on it, and it's going to be flowering here pretty soon. So I'll have in 9 months, it takes 9 months from the time it flowers and is pollinated to you picking a fruit. So it's kind of like a baby. Yeah, this tree is pregnant, and it's going to take it 9 months to develop that fruit. So be patient. I know it's tough. But what's kind of cool about it is in between that 9 months while you're waiting, it can put on another set of flowers. So now, once it gets going, about every 3 months, you're getting a crop. So that's lemons and limes. They will do that. That's kind of cool. Because I use a lot of lemons and I use a lot of limes. But this seems to really help. Now I did this last year on my potted citrus, and this year I've got a ton of flowers. So throughout the growing season, I was using the Tiger Bloom, and then about twice a year or 3 times a year I use the citrus mix, the citrus fertilizer. If you don't want to do the Tiger Bloom, then at least try to do the citrus mix every 6 to 8 weeks. If you're not going to do it at all, or if you're going to do it sparingly, do it spring and fall. At least you're going to get it twice a year, if that's the least you're going to do. Or if you're just going to do it once, do it in the spring. Okay, so also as you are going, as it's growing, the other things that you can use on these, this one is an oil spray. This is a mineral oil. And this is good for the scales, spider mites, white flies, anything that sucks juices out of this plant. And usually you know they're there because you'll have ants in your plants. And anytime you got ants in your plants, you got problems. So there's usually a bug in there, and this will take care of that. This one is for the leaf miner. They get a leaf miner when it gets new growth. It's tender, and there is some stuff coming on here. There's some little bitty stuff coming on here. The tender growth attracts this leaf miner, which is a flying insect. It comes along, it lays its eggs on that tender growth. The babies hatch and they climb into the center of the leaf. So the oil spray is not going to work for them. It has to be something that will actually penetrate the leaf. This one has a bacteria in it called spinosad that will actually penetrate the leaf and not poison your fruits. It doesn't go into the fruit system. So that's a good thing. But it will sink into the leaf and get that leaf miner. Now if you catch it before they get into the leaf, you avoid that damage. And what happens is it looks like somebody took a little squiggle mark and went through your leaves, and then the leaves as they grow will curl, turn brown, and look ugly. So if you got it in a pot, you kind of want it to look pretty because you're going to put it in a really neat spot, especially if it's got a cool pot. And you don't want people to, oh, what's wrong with your plant? It looks like it's got funk. Well, that's because you did it too late. So once you get the new growth, you hit it once with the spray, and then 10 days later you give it another application. Now, the tricky part is usually when they put on new growth, they're also flowering. So you want to avoid spraying the flowers, the open flowers. So you want to catch it when it's still in the bud form, or wait until the fruit is set. So if you got little bitty limes or lemons or oranges or grapefruits, whatever it is, that have set, you can see them on there, they've set little fruit, they're little bitty pieces of fruit on there, it's okay to spray it. If you do it like you catch it before the flowers open and then you wait 10 days later and they haven't set yet, you need to wait until they set. I have been experimenting with just hitting the new growth and not trying to hit the open flowers, and that seems to be working okay. But just try to avoid spraying open flowers with any of these sprays because that could cause the flower to drop off. If the flower drops off, you're not going to get any fruit, so that's not cool. All right, so the other thing I wanted to talk about is if you do decide that you have to put it in a big pot, that pot that I showed at the beginning is way too big for this plant. But if you wanted to put it in a pot, say like this, it's kind of scary. What you can do is you can use, this is Eevee stones, pumice, and this is a volcanic rock, and it's helps with the drainage. So you could put rocks in the bottom of the pot, you could put pumice in the bottom of the pot. I've taken plastic bottles and empty ones and squished them and stuck them in the bottoms of pots to take up some of that space. That way the plant is not trying to fill all that dirt with roots. It kind of like shortens up the pot inside. You don't see it. So the pumice is a good idea, the bottles, whatever, just to kind of take up some of that empty soil space in the pot. Okay, I think that's about all I needed to say. I think I've gone through all the stuff that's down on the bottom. So I hope this was helpful for you. If you liked what you saw, please click the like button and the subscribe if you have not subscribed, and the bell if you want to know when we've got a new video out. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day.